My name is Zara, and my ex cheated on me. So I married his best friend, and I thought it was revenge, until he found out the truth and walked away. And that is the moment I realized that somewhere between the plan and the execution, I had made a catastrophic miscalculation. Well, not the revenge part, but the falling in love part. That part was entirely my fault, and entirely inconvenient, but completely real. Before I start from the beginning, please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment on where you're watching from. I found out on a Thursday, which is not a day that has any business being this destructive, and I wasn't being snoopy. He just handed me his phone to find a restaurant, and the messages were simply there. 6 weeks of them. To a thread with a woman named Priya who used a lot of lowercase and a heart emoji I will never recover from. I had read enough, so I handed the phone back. "I found the place," I said. "I'll book it." Kelvin looked at me for a second too long. Something in my face must have been different. Then he nodded and went back to the television. I went to the bathroom, sat on the edge of the tub, but did not cry, did not scream, and did not do any of the things the moment technically called for. I took screenshots of everything I could find: the timeline, the hotel receipts in our shared email account, the conference weekend that now made complete and terrible sense. I am a very organized person when I'm furious. By the time I came out of the bathroom, I had a folder, a plan taking shape, and absolutely zero intention of letting Kelvin see any of it coming. 2 days later, I ran into Adrian at a coffee shop near my office. Now, Adrian Mensah had existed in my life for 3 years as Kelvin's friend. Quiet, observant, and a dry sense of humor that landed a second late and hit harder because of it. The kind of person who noticed things and said very little about what he noticed. He saw me walk in, didn't look away. I got my coffee and sat across from him without being invited. "How long have you known?" I asked. He didn't insult me by asking what I meant. 2 months, he said. 2 months. I told him to end it 3 times. I looked at him steadily. "And you didn't tell me because I knew you'd find out eventually," he said. "And I didn't want you to associate the worst moment with me." There was something in the air between us that I filed immediately under "not right now." "I want him to feel it," I said, "the way I felt it. I want him to understand what he had." Adrian said nothing. "I'm going to need your help." He tilted his head. "What kind of help?" And here is where, sleep-deprived and running entirely on controlled fury, I said the thing that started everything. "Maybe I should just marry you instead." He didn't laugh. Most people would have laughed. It was absurd. The correct response was a short, dismissive laugh that let us both move on. He looked at me with that steady, measuring look and said, "Tell me what you're actually thinking." That was the first moment I understood that Adrian Mensah was going to be a problem. And the plan was this: a visible, undeniable relationship that Kelvin would absolutely hear about. Same friend group, same regular spots. A small, interconnected world where nothing stays quiet. Adrian agreed, but with conditions. "I'm not performing," he said. "I'll be myself. That's what you get." "That's enough," I said. Something crossed his face. Gone before I could read it. "When it's over," he said, "you tell me directly, no fade out, just a clean ending." Agreed. We shook on it like two people who had absolutely no idea what they were agreeing to. What I did not know, what he told me much later, was that he had already decided, sitting in that coffee shop, that he wasn't going to let this be nothing. He had liked me for 2 years, 2 years of watching me be with his best friend, me keeping it exactly where it belonged, by saying nothing. He agreed to the plan because it was the only door that had opened, and he walked through it. The first 2 weeks were not what I expected. I had expected performance, the mutual execution of a visible relationship. What I got instead was just Adrian, unedited, in the specific and disorienting way of someone who doesn't know how to be anything other than exactly what he is. He cooked. Properly. Not the one impressive dish men learn for occasions, but genuinely, quietly, the way someone does when it's for themselves. He made me dinner on the third evening and put something in front of me that I ate in complete silence for longer than was socially acceptable. "You're staring," he said. "This is remarkable pasta." "It's really not." "Adrian, I need you to understand that no one has ever made me pasta like this." He looked like he was trying not to be pleased and failing slightly. He had opinions, real ones, formed from actual thought rather than reaction. He disagreed with me twice that first week and did it with such complete, unapologetic calm that I found it startling. Kelvin had always folded when I pushed back. I'd read it as accommodation. I now understood it had been disengagement. He hadn't cared enough to hold a position. Adrian held positions, quietly, completely. I started putting things in a folder called Do Not Examine Yet. The folder filled up fast. Kelvin saw us on a Saturday. We were at a bar he frequented, not accidentally, sitting close. Adrian saying something low that made me laugh, and I looked up and Kelvin was standing 12 feet away, completely still. I held his gaze for 2 seconds, then turned back to Adrian with a smile I made warm and private. Kelvin texted 40 minutes later, "Can we talk?" I put my phone face down. "First contact," Adrian said. He'd clocked Kelvin the moment we walked in. 40 minutes, I said. Faster than I expected. He doesn't handle being irrelevant well. No, I said. He really doesn't. Adrian looked at me. How do you feel? I considered it honestly. I had expected clean satisfaction. What I felt was more complicated. Satisfaction was in there, but other things too, things I wasn't ready to name. Ask me later, I said. He nodded. Didn't push. That was already becoming one of my favorite things about him, and I was not ready to examine that either. Kelvin did not take being ignored gracefully, and he called twice, texted 6 times. By day 5, the text had moved from, "We need to talk," to, "I know what you're doing," to a voice note I listened to once and deleted. He was not sorry. He was offended, which told me everything I needed to know about 3 years I had spent and could not get back. But then he did something I hadn't anticipated. He showed up at Diane's birthday dinner, mutual friends, full table, unavoidable. I arrived with Adrian and registered Kelvin at the far end of the table in the same half-second he registered us. We sat down. I kept my expression easy. It was fine for exactly 40 minutes. Then Kelvin leaned across the table during a lull and said, loud enough for half the table to hear, "Adrian, didn't realize you were coming. How long has this been going on?" Casual. Smiling. On the voice of someone who wants to seem unbothered and is not. "A few weeks," Adrian said simply. "Funny," Kelvin said. "Zara never mentioned you were close." "Zara and I had a lot of conversations you weren't part of," Adrian said. Still calm, still completely even. Kelvin's smile tightened. "I'm sure." The table had gone the specific quiet of people pretending they're not listening. I reached over and put my hand over Adrian's on the table. Not for Kelvin, not for the table, just I put my hand over his, and he turned his palm up and held it, and I felt something move through my chest that had nothing to do with strategy. Kelvin picked up his drink, said nothing else, but his eyes didn't leave us for the rest of the evening. 3 weeks in, I almost destroyed everything myself. We were at a house party. Crowded, loud, the kind of event where conversations happen in corners and everyone knows slightly too much about everyone else. I had stepped out to the back garden for air when Kelvin's friend Dami, sweet, oblivious Dami who meant no harm in the world, came out behind me. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure." "This thing with Adrian." He tilted his head. "Is it real? Like actually real? Because some people are saying..." My stomach dropped. "What are people saying?" Just that it happened fast, right after you and Kelvin, and some people think maybe it's—" He made a vague gesture. "You know." I looked at him, and here is the moment. Here is the fork in the road I did not handle as cleanly as I should have. "Who's saying that?" I asked. Too quickly. Dammy blinked. I don't know. Just because if Kelvin is telling people—" "Zara." I turned. Adrian was standing in the doorway. He had heard enough. I could tell by the specific stillness of him, not angry, just very, very quiet. Dammy looked between us, sensed the temperature, and excused himself with impressive speed. We stood in the garden. "How much of that was you almost confirming it?" he said. I opened my mouth, closed it. "Don't," he said, "and just be honest." "I panicked," I said. "About being caught, or about the fact that there's something to catch?" The question landed somewhere it was clearly meant to land. I looked at him in the dark garden with the party noise bleeding through the walls, and I said, for the first time, "The true thing. I don't know what this is anymore, Adrian. And I genuinely don't know." He looked at me for a long moment. "Okay," he said. "That's honest." He went back inside. I stood in the garden for another 3 minutes. Then I followed him. The shift happened on a Tuesday, which is never the night you expect it. Late dinner with friends, cab ride home full of conversation, his apartment closer. I ended up there, and we ended up on the fire escape because he said the apartment was too warm, which was true, and the city was doing that autumn thing where it looks worth staying up for. We talked, really talked. Not about Kelvin, not about the plan, just the actual substance of who we were. His brother, who called every Sunday and talked for 45 minutes. My mother and her opinions about my life choices. The job he'd almost taken in another city 2 years ago. Why didn't you go?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment. "There were things here I wasn't ready to leave," he said. "Like what?" He looked at me. Just looked, for a beat longer than the question needed. "Things," he said. I had pulled my knees up and was leaning slightly into his side without noticing I'd done it, and he had shifted to accommodate it without comment, and we sat like that in the full silence for a while. "Adrian," I said. "When did this stop being about Kelvin for you?" A long pause. "Honestly? Please." "It was never really about Kelvin for me," he said. "I agreed because you needed something and I wanted to give it to you, but my reasons were mine." I sat with that. "How long?" I asked. He exhaled slowly. "Long enough that it embarrassed me," he said. "While you were with him. I kept it where it belonged, but it was always there." "You should have told me," I said. "You were with my best friend." "And then, when I wasn't, when you weren't, you were hurt," he said. And arriving with feelings at that moment felt like exactly the wrong kind of opportunistic. "So you agreed to a fake relationship instead," I said, which seemed, at the time, like a reasonable solution. "That's insane," I said. "Fully aware," he said, and laughed. "That real one, the surprised one." I laughed too. Then I kissed him. Not planned, not performed, just the most honest thing I had done in months. He kissed me back like he'd been waiting. Not urgent, just completely and quietly certain. When we stopped, he looked at me. "Zara," he said. "Oh, I know what this is," I said. "I know." And I meant it. Kelvin had been quiet for 2 weeks. That should have worried me. Kelvin quiet was not Kelvin peaceful. It was Kelvin planning. I had known him for 3 years, and I had forgotten that particular lesson, distracted by everything that had been quietly reorganizing itself inside me. He chose a Saturday night, a birthday party, full room, maximum audience, because Kelvin had always understood the power of a room. It started the moment Adrian stepped away to get drinks. Kelvin appeared at my side with a glass in his hand and a smile that didn't reach anywhere near his eyes. "Having fun?" "Very much," I said. "You and Adrian look comfortable." "We are." "Funny thing," he said, and his voice shifted. casual, caring. Or I was thinking about how this all started. You finding out about Priya, and then 2 days later, you're suddenly all over my best friend. He tilted his head, almost like it was a plan. I felt the room shift, the nearest conversations dimming. Almost like, he continued louder now, someone decided the best revenge was to use the closest person available. And then Adrian was back, standing 6 feet away, drinks in hand, completely still. Kelvin looked at him. She used you, man. She told me herself she wanted revenge. You were convenient. I looked at Adrian. He looked at me. And the question in his eyes wasn't angry yet. It was worse. It was careful. The look of someone running a rapid, painful audit of everything they'd let themselves believe. Zara, he said. Quiet. Just my name. Just the question inside it. The room was completely silent now, and I could have deflected. I could have dismantled Kelvin's credibility, which was genuinely poor. I could have made the smart move. Instead, I looked at Adrian and told the truth. It started that way, I said. Kelvin smiled. Adrian set both drinks down on the nearest table, looked at me for one more long, unreadable moment, and walked out. He didn't answer that night, or the next morning. I did not sleep. I sat with every version of how it could have gone differently, and every moment I'd chosen not to tell him when I should have. The truth is, I'd been circling it for weeks, meaning to, telling myself there was still time. On the second day of silence, Kelvin texted me, "I think we should talk. I made a mistake. I miss you." I stared at it. And then something clarified in me, clean and complete, like a fog lifting all at once. I did not want this. I had not wanted this for a long time. The revenge had never really been about getting Kelvin back. It had been about being seen, about someone understanding what they'd thrown away. He understood now. That was enough. That chapter was finished. I put the phone down and drove to Adrian's building. He answered the door. He hadn't slept either. He stepped back to let me in without a word. I stood in the middle of his living room. "I'm not going to make this comfortable," I said. "I'm just going to say it." He leaned against the door frame, arms crossed, waiting. "It started as revenge," I said. "That's true. I was hurt and furious, and you were available, and I'm not proud of that framing. But Adrian, something happened that I didn't plan for, which was you, the actual you. And I kept waiting for it to feel like strategy again, and it stopped feeling like strategy around week 2, and I didn't know how to tell you without admitting what it started as." He said nothing. The fire escape was real. Everything after the fire escape was real. Kelvin got to say it before I did, and that was my fault. I knew I needed to tell you, and I kept choosing the easier thing, and I'm sorry. That was wrong. Silence. "I'm done with the revenge," I said. "It worked. He knows what he lost. I don't care about that anymore." I looked at him directly. "I care about this, about you, and I understand if this is too complicated now, but I needed you to hear it from me before you decided." Adrian was quiet for a long time. Then he pushed off the door frame and crossed the room and stopped in front of me. "I knew," he said. I stared at him. "What?" "Not everything, but I knew it started because of him. I'm not naive, Zara." He exhaled. I agreed because it was the only door open, and I wanted to walk through it. I thought I could be okay with however it ended. "And now?" "Now I'm not angry about the beginning," he said. "I'm angry that you had weeks of knowing it was real, and you still let him be the one to say it out loud first. That's the part that hurt." "I know," I said. "I was scared you'd decide the start disqualified everything after. That's not your decision to make for me." "I know that now." He looked at me. "I need one thing," he said. "If this continues, no more managing what you think I can handle. You tell me things, directly, even when it's hard." "Yes," I said. "Yes, completely. And I need an actual apology, not a constructed one. I looked at him and I let it be simple. "I'm sorry," I said. "I used something real to patch something broken, and I should have told you the moment it changed. I'm sorry it came from him. That was wrong." He held my gaze. Then, "Come here," he said, and I did. But that is not where the story ends, because Kelvin wasn't done. 3 days later, he called Adrian directly. I don't know exactly what was said. Adrian told me about it that evening, sitting at the kitchen table, with the particular exhaustion of someone who has had a conversation they didn't want to have. Kelvin had offered him a choice, framed as concern. "I'm looking out for you. She played us both. You deserve better than someone who used you. Underneath it, unmistakably, choose me or choose her. You can't have both." "What did you say?" I asked. Adrian looked at me across the table. "I told him that the friendship was already over," he said. "Not because of you, because of him, because he cheated on someone I cared about for 6 weeks and lied to my face about it and then tried to weaponize it when it cost him something." A pause. "I told him I'd been done since month 2. I just hadn't said it out loud yet." I was quiet. "He hung up," Adrian said. "Are you okay?" He considered it honestly, the way he considered everything. "I lost a friendship that had already ended," he said. "That's not the same as losing something real." He reached across the table and turned my hand palm up. "This," he said, "is something real." I looked at our hands, at this man who had waited 2 years, agreed to something complicated, held his positions quietly, made extraordinary pasta, and chosen in a room full of people when it cost him something to still be here. "Yeah," I said, "it really is." I went looking for revenge. I wanted Kelvin to feel the specific weight of what he'd thrown away, to sit with it, to know it. And in the end, I think he does. I think that's the thing about losing something carelessly. The understanding comes later, when the cost is clear and the thing is already gone. But that is not what I'm left with. What I'm left with is Adrian, who holds his positions quietly and notices everything and makes pasta like it's nothing, and waited 2 years and then walked through the only door that opened and never once made me feel like the starting point was all I was. Who, when I was standing in his living room with nothing left but the truth, chose to stay. I thought I was getting revenge on Kelvin. What I actually did was find the person who had been there the whole time, patient, certain, waiting for me to stop looking in the wrong direction. I thought it was a plan. It turned out to be something I never planned for. And honestly, that's the better story. If you like this story, please support us by subscribing and liking, and kindly drop a comment on the location from where you're watching. Thank you.